I'm Jody Danner Walker is my name, and right now I primarily do kiln form glass, or glass that's made in a kiln. It's also called warm glass or fused glass. There's lots of names for it, and so I'm an artist, and I would say that's my number one. What I am as an artist, who I am, and then so I've got art all over the world, art bought by people and been in galleries all over the world. Then I'm a teacher, so I teach here in our studio. I've taught at Corning all over the U.S. and around the world, taught as well. And then I'm also a writer because I've written a book, Printmaking Techniques on Glass, which is fairly well received. So that's basically who I am. The show is going to be, I've kind of in my mind called it Life Forms, because to me that's what I kind of been working on. And the story is about undersea and like undersea creatures or undersea shapes, coral, octopus, like different kind of shapes have inspired it. The jellyfish, I did a jellyfish out there. There's undersea canyons. So that's kind of what the show is about. And so all the pieces have been inspired by, so the shapes or the colors or have all been inspired by stuff going on underneath the water. So if you look up underneath here, there's it's a pot like this. It's up in there. It's like a pot. So there's a hole in the bottom of it, and the glass then heats up, sitting up there heating in the kiln, and then as it starts flowing out, that's when I'm going to start manipulating it. For the show, I'm just trying to make this shape, so I'm not doing all kinds of really complicated things right now. So it's starting to flow.
Train loads of pellets, plastic comes through. They dump it in these huge hoppers that are 30 to 40 feet above you, and they melt the pellets.
And I'm letting it cool as it's going down. This one I may lose because I've got it attached to the piece, so I might not get anything out of it. Brad, are you going to come over and cut it off?
Yeah, sure.
We'll have to have Randy talk about this.
Can you do that real quick, please? Can you cut that off real quick, please?
Brad was a highly paid executive in a large corporation, and suddenly
It no longer exists.
people.
Okay, so right now what I'm doing is I'm twisting it around to create like the twist. There's like twists in the piece, so these are supposed to be like undersea, the little wisps that come out of like sea anemones and all those. So that's kind of what this is supposed to be. So I'm just twisting it. There's not a ton of color in here because this is going to be white to be a complement to the.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
All right, now I'm just trying to measure to see if I've got
Even
the
some
right,
accounting people,
how long I want to make them. Okay.
I see Fred Johnson at the gym.
So what happens, it starts out like really orange and hot, and then as it starts to come down, it cools down and you start to get the color. Like,
How many will you get out of a batch?
this one.
20.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm just going to have Brad pull the
I'll
last
just finish them.
ones.
She'll do a couple and then you can go back and.
You can see it's oranger up at the top, and as the color, like if it's different colors like blue, you won't even know it was blue until it started to cool down. My inspiration, basically, I would say, well, I think nature, number one, because I'm always inspired by what's around me. I like to tell a story, so if it's something that, a lot of my work, there's stories that go with the work. And so ordinary people doing ordinary things are also a huge inspiration for me. So it just depends on, what I'm working on at that moment. I worked at Wake Forest, quit Wake Forest. I was a coordinator of study abroad international students. Quit Wake Forest, and my husband Brad had started doing some glass. And I was a painter. I did paintings and pastels. And he kept saying, "Oh, Jody, you need to do glass. This would be fabulous for, as a as a new medium, and I kept saying I don't know, because I wasn't sure. I wanted to do it all on my own. So, and then finally when 9/11 happened, I went into the basement and created my first piece of glass, which was a glass mask. And I felt like I could find a way to express myself, and I felt like it would be a really nice, for me, because I'm so ADHD and I get bored easily, so it gave me a lot of options for expressing myself. So with the glasswork, I've never had any formal training. In high school, I had a painting class and a ceramics class, and that's the only art training I had until we lived in England for 2 years, and one of my friends saw my drawings, because I used to draw all the time, and she saw some drawings and she said, my sister's an artist in England, let me get you into a university. And I said, no way, I'm not going to do that because I'm really shy. And so she signed me up, drove me there, and shoved me out the door. Didn't tell me until I got to the school that I was going to be doing this, literally shoved me out the door. And I did it for 2 years. So I took basically oil painting classes. So that's really the most formal training. And I've taken a couple of glass classes. The most notable glass class I took was with Harvey Littleton's studio, which Harvey Littleton is considered the father of studio glass, and he actually taught Chihuly. So I went and took a class at his studio with Dan Weldon, who is a printmaker who worked with like de Kooning and huge names. So that to me is my, I've only taken like 3 classes, and that was one of them. So that was really inspiring for me. I think 2001 was when I did my first piece of glass. I've done it off and on since then. I had a 2-year hiatus. I had knee surgery. Anyway, nerve damage in my knee, so I couldn't do anything for a couple years. But glass is awesome because it makes you forget everything. So it's like the most wonderful thing you can do. So I just love it. But yeah, so I don't know, so maybe 16 or 15 years, something like that. I can be a painter one day, I can be a sculptor one day, I can carve into glass like a wood turner one day, and then I do printmaking as well in the glass. So I did develop my white pieces, the white pieces that I do. I'm the only one in the world that does them, so I developed them, so I'm really well known for those. They're white ice pieces, and so that's, I do a lot of other work as well, but that's something I specifically developed that's nobody else does. So for the white pieces, typically what happens is I start with a mold, I create a mold and build it, and then what has to happen is it's called pâte de verre. I call it pâte de verre sucre because it's like a sugary white, or it could be colored. I've done colored pieces as well, but it is pâte de verre is a traditional type of glass, and pâte de verre is translated as pieces of glass, and you're placing colors in specific places. So that's why it's called pâte de verre. And then I called it sucre to add the sugary bit. So I'm placing pieces of glass specifically in areas. And so I build a mold, and then I take glass, and they're called frits. So they're like little tiny pieces of glass. So I take those, and then I use a binder, and then I build on the molds for that particular kind of glass. I build on the mold, and then what happens is the binder burns off at 900 degrees, but the glass doesn't start sticking to itself till 1280 is when it really starts sticking to itself. So for those 300, 400 degrees, there's nothing holding my glass in place. So my molds are very, there's a lot of movement and curves and some up and down areas. So the glass is literally, I'm defying gravity. And so it's extremely difficult to do. And I've worked a long time to try and get it so that it actually is successful. But even then, not always is it successful. The kiln gods have their own sense of humor, so you just never know. First, when it turns out okay, that's always exciting. When I actually open the kiln, it's okay and it worked. That's very exciting. But I think when I can tell a story is what makes me most excited about doing it. And when I can find a way to express it, really well and, in glass, and I really feel like it's a complete thought. I just hope they come away and think differently, because I think people are so exposed to paintings and exposed to ceramics and exposed to things like that. But glass is just such a unique, has a unique voice. And so I'm always hoping people touch it and are just like, that it's just, like I always love when people go up to the glass and look in the side and try and figure out how it was made, or, or like, oh my goodness, how can that, be done? And I just love it. That makes me the happiest, is when people can just be surprised by what you can do with glass. I think what I'm working on right now is my favorite right now. I think in the moment I'm always whatever's my favorite. Like I love doing my glass books, and I love doing my glass records, and I love doing the white pieces. But right now I'm really trying to develop this new body of work, which is done a different way. And so it's, I'm always liking to, kind of be a, mad scientist too, and try and figure things out and make it work. And when it's complicated, it makes it even more exciting, because, just you can learn so much from it. The most difficult part is I think it's not successful a lot. What I'm doing is pushing so many limits. I mean, so many boundaries, and there's so many limitations on glass. And I'm really pushing a lot of the limitations. And, I mean, if I'm doing a little piece of jewelry, it's one thing. But when I'm doing these big pieces that are so complex, so I'm just always thrilled when I open the kiln and it's actually like, or when I take the plaster off a piece and it actually worked out. And every time the color starts coming through, that I just get so excited. So that's my favorite, I guess. I've shown places all over the world. I've been in a lot of galleries all over the U.S., like Corning Museum of Glass, and I was in Pismo, I was in Asheville. I've been in a lot of galleries, and there's stuff online, and just, I don't know, there's all kinds of... But a lot of galleries are closing now, I have to be honest with you. Like Pismo's closed, which is such a shame. There's these really great galleries, but I think because of the internet, so many galleries are really struggling a lot. I must have had probably 10, 15 galleries closed. And these are big name galleries that have been around for a long time. And I think it's a really unusual time right now. My future goals, I've been very lucky. I mean, I really have been very lucky, fortunate. I don't know if it's luck or whatever, but like being an artist, I was in Corning Museum of Glass. Every year they have a magazine that they put out, that they put the 100 best pieces of glass in the world that year, and I was lucky enough to be in that. So I feel like I've achieved that goal, and I've taught around the world, and I've got art around the world. So I feel like I've achieved a lot of the big goals. And I've written the book, Printmaking Techniques on Glass. So I've written the book, I've achieved so many of the goals. I've been so fortunate. So at this point, I just hope my work still sells. And, I hope I can still keep doing art for as long as possible. That to me is I love it so much that, it's just such a joy to do the glass. And so... hopefully, to me, that's the goal, is just to be able to keep coming in and doing it as long as I can. I think the advice I would give to people that are just starting out with glass would be to take it slow. Glass is expensive. Even to work in it, it's expensive. For me, I always loved to work big. I loved huge paintings, and so I had to learn to start out small with glass and then take it bigger. So I think that would be do maquettes, do small maquettes first, and then grow it bigger, because you don't want to make all your mistakes in your big pieces. You'd rather make mistakes on a small scale. But I say come on, because I said for people that can do painting, there's stuff for them. People that love sculpture, there's stuff for them. Printmaking, there's stuff for them. I mean, it's just the most exciting field to be in. The glass just is so exciting. So have a little bit of a sense of humor, and just, don't expect everything to always work out either. And sometimes you get the best things when it doesn't work out. So I would say my favorite food to eat is chocolate. And talents. I'm a great baker. Well, actually, what's really interesting is when I was 16, I went to England by myself and studied in my great aunt's bakery in northern England, and spent the summer there. Paid for it all on my own, and so I thought I was going to become a baker. I thought that's what I would do. And when I started doing this, it was really a question of whether we wanted to take a space and do glass, or if I wanted to open a bake shop. My favorite thing to bake? Pies. I'm a really good pie baker.